Hello everyone, Ember here, and welcome back to a new video. In this one, I'm going to be taking a look at the many Froslass and Glalie of GLC. So originally I thought, okay, maybe Glalie should be its own video, but to be honest, I just am a bit biased and I prefer Glalie to Froslass. Don't come at me in the comments or anything, but yeah, I just prefer one more than the other, basically. I love Snorrent equally, of course, but I prefer Glalie to Froslass, really. So yeah, the many Glalie and Froslass of GLC. But of course, as always, just before we get going, what is GLC? It's a single prize only, no Robux format allowed, so no EXs, no Vs, none of that kind of stuff, just single prize Pokemon. It is singleton, except for basic energy. So the really cool thing about this evolution line is that if you want to run Glalie and Froslass in your deck, then you can, that's perfectly fine. However, you will only be able to run one Snorrent, but at the very least, you do have the flexibility of choosing which Pokemon to evolve into. So you can kind of like always keep your opponent guessing as well which evolution you're going to be using, basically. And of course, if you want to play a Pokemon recovery option like Rescue Stretcher, for example, to retrieve Snorrent, you could then evolve it into the different evolution later on in the game. Just some food for thought, really. But yeah, so singleton except for basic energy, and you're only allowed one type per deck. So first, of course, we have the basics. We've got some Snorrents. Honestly, I don't think any of these are that impressive. Maybe like the art rare is quite nice. 60 HP, has the attack Ice Shard, which can do 40 if your opponent's active is a fighting type, which is kind of niche, but it might just be better than maybe doing damage with continuous headbutt, and Astonish is okay, I guess. So like you've got some fine options, but if you want the rarity upgrade, of course, you do have the art rare at the very least. But yeah, the first one we've got here is all the way back from the black and white era. We've got two with the Team Plasma badge, which is quite nice. And both of these are not that impressive, to be honest. I think the Froslass with Team Plasma badge is probably better than the Glalie. Cursed Glare says as long as this Pokemon is in your active, basically your opponent can't attach any special energy cards from his or her hand to his or her Pokemon. So it will stop things like Porygon Z, which is a very competitive colors type card, of course, which is great. However, that aside, it's not really super impactful. Like your opponent, most decks in GLC, they'll get away with not having to attach special energy. So it's kind of a niche counter. And of course, as soon as your opponent gusts around Froslass, then the ability stops working. So not super great. And then Blizzard's only doing 30 and then a little bit of spread damage to your opponent's bench. So not the best, but at least it's got some flavor. Next up is we have a one from Generations. This one has the ability Drag Along, which is basically just when this thing gets KO'd. There's a 50% chance Froslass says, yeah, I'm not done with you just yet, and you get to KO your opponent's active Pokemon, which honestly I find is quite humorous. I've always loved these styles of abilities. I think there's one on Chandelure as well, actually, from this kind of era, which is very cool. Like, they're very fun to play around with. Of course, they're very flippy, and the downside is they're often paired up with a terrible attack. So Snowy Drop, which is 3 colors, says put 4 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon any way you like, which is pretty mediocre. It's pretty rough. But Drag Along can be quite funny. You could use it to take out, a very powerful Pokemon the opponent's wasted a lot of resources setting up. So, could be pretty good, maybe. But yeah, it's a bit expensive in the attack cost. Then we have one from Sun and Moon Guardians Rising, which Crunch is, it's a bit whatever. Then Raging Flow for 3 water does 70, and then if it has any damage counters on it whatsoever, so it could be just 1 damage counter, or it could be many, then it does 80 more damage, which is quite sizable actually for damage output. Now, of course, you'll have to use something like Baxcalibur or maybe even just a Frostmath just to get energy on there. As for the damage counters, Rainbow Energy, I mean, you could use that. There's also like Po Town, there's the Gapejaw Bog Stadium that was a bit more recent. So there's plenty of options. Honestly, this Glalie is not that bad. It is a bit expensive though, like you have to sink 3 energy onto this stage 1 Pokemon, so it's not going to be set up like super early in the game, I would imagine. But if you did want to use it, then, you could definitely have worse options. So that's pretty cool. Next up is a Froslass from Unified Minds. This one's honestly quite fun. It's a one that I have a lot of, actually, because I tried playing this in Standard at one point. But yeah, it's not the best. Spiteful Sigh, put up to 7 damage counters on this Pokemon, and you do 20 damage for each damage counter you placed in this way. So if you miraculously survive for whatever reason, you could potentially use something like a Last Chance Potion, or like a Bianca, for example, from a later set, to heal all that damage. But yeah, and just reuse Spiteful Sigh. But to be honest, it's just not that great. Like, you can do a ton of damage, 1 energy, which is good. So if you just want like a Glass Cannon stage 1, then maybe this is a good option. But aside from that, Icy Wind's only doing 40 and then puts your opponent's active Pokemon to a sleep, which is not the best. Like, it's okay in some situations, but typically you just want to be doing as much damage as possible, and Spiteful Sigh is your main way of doing that, which you'll only be able to do once, really. So that's kind of a shame. It doesn't really let you steamroll the opponent, that's for sure. Like, you won't just be able to use back-to-back Spiteful Sighs, but aside from that, it's honestly a pretty solid Froslass, just not the best, really. Then we have a Glalie from, I believe that's Cosmic Eclipse. Has 2 attacks. Ice Fang is potentially paralyzed and also does discard energy, which is quite cool actually for a single energy. And then Frosty Typhoon does 120 and you can't use it next turn. So honestly, I think this is a bit of a downgrade from the one we looked at earlier. But Icy Fang can be quite devastating. Paralysis and discard energy could definitely cause some problems for your opponent. So that's cool. The artwork's great, just Frosty Typhoon's not brilliant. Like, you could use double colorless, help pay for the attack cost, but I just think the previous Glalie was significantly better than this one, so bit of a shame, but still not the worst option in the world. Then we have a Froslass from Chilling Reign, so getting to the Sword and Shield era now. This one has the ability Frost Over. It says, when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may attach a Water Energy card from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon. Now, this wouldn't be the worst ability in the world if we didn't have just way, way, way better options. Like Frostmoth is really good. Baxcalibur is really good. Like, there's just too many better choices for this kind of ability. Like, we've got Aqua Patch, which basically is just the same thing, right? So I don't think Frostover is very good. I think you could definitely do a lot better for energy acceleration. I guess if you're not like super fussed and you don't want to run Frostmoth or Baxcalibur, then yeah, maybe you could run this and get some energy occasionally. But if you want to reuse the ability, you'll have to use something like a Super Scoop Up to retrieve Froslass, which is a 50% chance to do it anyway, but still kind of cool at least. And then Crystal Breath does 90, and during next turn, this Pokemon can't attack, which is, who cares? It's probably getting one shot anyway, because it only has 90 HP itself, but 90 for 2 is not that bad, actually. But yeah, the ability is just a bit mediocre, but at least you have a gold rarity at the very least, so some nice points here, pros and cons for sure, but yeah, I just think you've got better choices, really. Next up is a one from Silver Tempest, has the attack Frosty Jail, which does 20 damage, whoopee. But if you played a Candice from your hand during this turn, then this attack does 90 more damage, and your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. So a very, very strong effect, but the only problem is, of course, you have to actually track down Candice, which says, look at the top 7 cards of your deck, and you may reveal any number of water Pokemon and water energy cards you find there and put them into your hand. So Candice itself is a very good supporter for this deck, just water decks in general, so that's great. It's not as if it's a bad supporter to use. But of course, you will have to repeatedly use Candice if you want to take advantage of several Froslass. Now, I think there is an argument to be made that if you just try and lead every game with Froslass, and you just use Candice to get set up, then maybe Frosty Jail is just enough, really, for the early game. Like, you only need to use Froslass once or twice. It's getting KO'd immediately after that anyway, because it only has 90 HP. So if you just use this as, like, a first attacker maybe in the deck, and then after that you just use other things, then yeah, maybe Frosty Jail isn't the worst thing in the world to lead with, really. So that's kind of cool. As for the Glalie, better shout him out. Big Mouth for 4 colorless, which is a bit expensive. Does 130, and surprise, if you played Candice from your hand during this turn, it does 130 more damage. So 260 is a lot. So this is very much like the opposite kind of situation. Like, I would say Froslass is best in the early game with Candice, whereas Glalie Candice is more like you've got a Frostmoth or a Baxcalibur already set up on the bench. So both have decent applications. Like, if you're running Froslass and Candice, you may as well run Glalie, right? But yeah, still very fun options. I would probably lean into these guys if I had them, but yeah, it seems like a fun little package that you could run in GLC for sure. Then we have the one, of course, from Twilight Masquerade, very infamous, very annoying with Budew, and of course, like the Lake Trio. But it has the ability Freezing Shroud during Pokemon Checkup. Put 1 damage counter on each Pokemon that has an ability, both yours and your opponent's, except any Froslass. Just a very, very, very strong ability because, yeah, you've got this like Glalie, which actually has synergy with Damage Beat, but you've also just got a lot of Water-type Pokemon that do spread options, like Dewgong, for example, has a really good attack that doesn't have an ability as well, so there's just a lot of choice. Like, I don't have time really to go over all of them, but it's a great card. There's a lot of versatility, of course, just kind of stay away from abilities if you can. Or if you're going to use abilities, then only really play one or two, really. But yeah, it's still a very good Froslass, I would say. And this Froslass on the left looks amazing. Like this weird kind of reminds me of Mortal Kombat, actually, at the start of the Mortal Kombat movie. But okay, kind of going off topic here. But yeah, Glalie is cool. Damage beat is decent. So yeah, seems pretty fun. But yeah, thank you for watching. I do a new set review for GLC with each new release, so do subscribe if you're interested in being updated. This is the series to stay, so let me know which Pokemon you'd like to see. However, I've got like 4 in the queue, so but still leave the suggestions down below and I'll get around to them eventually. There is a list, but getting through them, and a playlist has been made. And if you want to dive into the competitive side, I do recommend Omnipoke and format creator Tricky Gym because they've both done fantastic videos and guides for each type. And before we close, there is also this pre-release promo art for Froslass, so you have plenty of choice for Freezing Shroud as well. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, it's been Ember Power. Let me know what you think down below. Will you be running Froslass in your Water-type GLC deck, or Glalie for that matter? And yeah, thank you for watching.